The gavel didn't fall in an auction house. It fell in a private study, thick with the smell of old brandy and defeat. For Ilara Vale, it was the sound of her life ending. Her own father, Lord Alistair Vale, a man hollowed out by gambling, had just sold her. Not her hand in marriage, but her very person, sold to Lord Harrington, a man whose smile never reached his cold, appraising eyes. She was a debt, a human ledger, to be settled. But as Harrington reached to claim his property, the study door opened, and a voice like chilled steel cut through the room. "The price is wrong. I will double it." The dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that managed to pierce the heavy velvet curtains of Lord Alistair Vale's study. Once, this room had been a place of authority, the heart of the Vale estate. Now, it was a tomb, smelling of stale spirits and the acidic tang of desperation. Ilara Vale stood beside the cold fireplace, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were a bloodless white. She had been summoned by her father, and she had come, as a dutiful daughter always does. But the man who faced her was not her father. He was a shell, his eyes darting, his hands trembling. "Ilara, my dear," he began, his voice a weak rasp, "we have a guest, Lord Harrington." From the shadows of a wing-back chair, a man emerged. Lord Cuthbert Harrington was not an old man, but he carried an air of aged corruption. He was impeccably dressed, his waistcoat a gaudy silk, a heavy gold signet ring on his pinky finger. His eyes, however, were what held Ilara captive. They were a flat, lifeless grey, and they roamed over her with an unnerving, possessive assessment. This was not a social call. "Miss Vale," Harrington said, his voice a low purr that made her skin crawl. "A pleasure." Ilara offered the barest curtsy, her spine rigid. "Lord Harrington, I was not aware we were expecting you." "Oh, I am long overdue," Harrington said, glancing at her father. "Your father and I have been engaged in a series of business ventures. Unfortunately, his investments have proven unsound." Alistair Vale flinched, collapsing into his chair. "Harrington, please, there must be another way." "There is no other way, Vale," Harrington snapped, his polite veneer vanishing. "You have exhausted my patience. The gaming tables at Brooks's have claimed the last of your credit. The house is mortgaged to the rafters. Your lineages are all that you have left, and as you have no sons, your daughter—" He let the sentence hang, his gaze returning to Ilara. A cold dread, colder than the marble fireplace, crept up Ilara's spine. "Father, what has he done?" Alistair Vale couldn't meet her eyes. He stared at a decanter of brandy as if it held the answers to the universe. I made a wager, Ilara, a final one, to clear the debts." "And he lost," Harrington finished, smiling. He stepped toward Ilara. "He wagered you." The room tilted. Ilara gripped the mantelpiece to steady herself. "Wagered me? You speak as if I am a horse. That is not legal. That is not possible." "Oh, it is very possible, my dear," Harrington sneered. "It is not a marriage contract. Let us be clear. Your father signed a note of indenture. You are to be my ward, my companion. You will live in my home, under my protection, and you will attend to my needs until I deem the debt paid, which I assure you will be a very, very long time." The euphemism was sickeningly clear. He wasn't buying a wife, he was buying a mistress, a slave. Ilara's stomach churned. She looked at her father, her eyes pleading. "Father, tell me this is a lie. Tell me you did not do this." Alistair Vale finally looked up, his face a mask of pathetic self-pity. "He would have ruined us. We would be in debtor's prison. What choice did I have?" "You had the choice to be a man." Ilara's voice, though shaking, was clear as a bell. You had the choice not to sell your own flesh and blood. Such fire, Harrington mused, stepping closer. He was close enough now that she could smell the bay rum on his skin. I do enjoy a filly with spirit. It makes the taming so much more rewarding. He reached out, intending to stroke her cheek. Ilara recoiled as if struck. "Do not touch me." Harrington chuckled. "You have no say in the matter, Miss Vale. The papers are signed. Your father has been paid his pittance, just enough to keep him in brandy for a month. You are, for all intents and purposes, my property." "I will scream," Ilara threatened, her heart hammering against her ribs. "And who will come? The servants who haven't been paid in a season? Your father, who holds the receipt for your sale?" Harrington pulled a document from his coat pocket. "It is done. Pack a small bag. My carriage is waiting." Ilara looked from the lecherous man before her to the broken one in the chair. There was no escape. Her father had not just gambled away their fortune, he had gambled away her life. The world had shrunk to this single, suffocating room. She was trapped, condemned by the very man who should have protected her. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by her father's quiet, gasping sob. It was not a sob of remorse for her, Ilara knew. It was a sob of relief for himself. He was safe. She was the price. "I will not pack," Ilara said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You will have to take me as I am. And I promise you, Lord Harrington, you will regret this bargain more than my father ever regretted his." Harrington's eyes flashed with dark amusement. "Oh, I doubt that very much. I find I am already anticipating the returns on my investment." He gestured to the door. "After you, my dear." As Ilara walked past her father, she did not look at him. She couldn't. To look at him would be to shatter into 1,000 pieces. She kept her head high, her back straight, walking out of her home and into a living nightmare. The heavy oak door of the study clicked shut behind her, sealing the deal. The exchange was not to take place at the Vale estate, nor at Harrington's London townhouse. It was to be finalized in the cold, impersonal confines of a private room at the Albion Club, a gentleman's establishment where fortunes were won and lost, and apparently daughters were traded. Ilara felt numb. She had been escorted by 2 of Harrington's burly footmen, men who looked more like prize fighters than servants. She sat on a hard-backed chair, her gaze fixed on a painting of a naval battle, refusing to look at Harrington, who was comfortably sipping a port. "Your father's lawyers have been by," Harrington said, casually, swirling the ruby liquid in his glass. "Everything is in order. The transfer of the debt and its collateral is complete." Ilara remained silent. Her mind was racing, seeking any possible escape. But there was none. She was a woman without money or connections. Her father had disowned her by his very actions. She was utterly alone. The door to the private room opened, but it was not a waiter. The man who entered commanded the space instantly. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored black coat that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His face was severe, almost beautiful in its cold, aristocratic lines, with intelligent, piercing dark eyes. He looked at Harrington with utter disdain, then his gaze moved to Ilara. It lingered for only a second, but in that second, she felt seen. Not appraised, like livestock, but seen. Harrington scrambled to his feet, his smugness evaporating. "Your Grace, what an unexpected honor. This is a private matter." The Duke of Ashworth, Alistair Alec Blackwood, ignored him. Alec Blackwood was a name whispered in drawing rooms across London. Incredibly wealthy, famously reclusive, and possessing a cutting wit, He was a man who answered to no one. "Lord Harrington," the Duke's voice was smooth, like polished obsidian. "You are conducting business. I am here to make a counteroffer." Harrington looked baffled. "A counteroffer? Your Grace, I believe you are mistaken. The business is concluded." "It is not," the Duke stated flatly. He walked to the table and placed a leather satchel upon it. It landed with a heavy, definitive thud. "I am aware of Lord Vale's debt. I know the amount to the last shilling, and I know the nature of your collateral." Elara's breath hitched. How could he know? Harrington's eyes narrowed. "This is not your concern, Ashworth." "I am making it my concern," Alec said. He unclasped the satchel. "You purchased Lord Vale's debt. I am here to purchase it from you." Harrington laughed, a short, nervous bark. "She's not for sale, Your Grace. I have plans for Miss Vale." "I am not negotiating for Miss Vale," the Duke said, his voice dropping. "I am negotiating for the paper she is tied to. You are a businessman, Harrington. You bought a debt of, shall we say, £20,000, a staggering sum for a fool like Vale." He paused, his dark eyes boring into Harrington. "I am offering you £40,000 for that note. Right now. In cash." The colour drained from Harrington's face. £40,000. It was a fortune. It was double what he was owed, an obscene profit for a single night's predatory work. Greed warred with his lecherous desires, and greed was a powerful foe. That's an absurd sum," Harrington stammered. "It is, and it is the only offer you will receive." The Duke gestured to the satchel. "Take it, or I shall spend the next 6 months of my life, and an equal amount of my fortune, systematically destroying every credit line and business venture you have. I will see you ruined, Harrington. I will see you in the very debtor's prison you so enjoy sending others to. Your choice." There was no bluff in his voice. It was a simple statement of fact. Harrington looked at the Duke, then at Elara, his face twisting in rage. He was being outplayed, and he knew it. But the sum was too large to ignore. With a snarl, he reached into his coat and pulled out the signed indenture. "You'll regret this, Ashworth. She'll bore you in a week." "That is my concern," the Duke said. He took the paper and passed Harrington a banker's draft from the satchel. "The rest is in the bag. Count it if you wish." Harrington snatched the draft and the bag. He gave Elara one last, venomous look. "You have made an enemy today, Miss Vale." "She has made a friend, Harrington," the Duke corrected him. "Now get out." Harrington, clutching his newfound wealth, stormed from the room, slamming the door behind him. The silence that descended was heavy, suffocating. Elara stared at the Duke, her mind reeling. She was free from Harrington. But what did this mean? The Duke of Ashworth turned to her. His expression was unreadable. He walked to the fireplace and tossed the indenture note into the flames. They watched it curl, blacken, and turn to ash. "The debt is paid, Miss Vale," he said quietly. "You are free." Elara stood up, her legs unsteady. "Your Grace, I have no words. I cannot possibly repay you." "I do not require repayment," he said, turning to face her. "Your father is a fool, and Harrington is a parasite. I could not, in good conscience, allow that transaction to stand." "So, I am free to go?" she asked, her voice trembling with a fragile hope. Alec Blackwood held her gaze. "You are free to go, but I ask you not to." Her heart sank. I do not understand." "You are free from Harrington. You are free from your father's debt," he clarified. "But your reputation, Miss Vale, is not. By now, the servants at your home, Harrington's men, The members of this club. The story is already spreading. A woman sold to Lord Harrington. If I let you walk out that door, you will be destitute by nightfall and ruined by morning. No one will hire you. No one will take you in. Harrington, in his spite, will see to that. He was right. The terrible, devastating truth of it settled on her. She had escaped one monster only to be trapped by society itself. What is it you propose, Your Grace? She asked, dreading the answer. I propose an arrangement, he said, his tone careful, precise. You will come with me to Ashworth House. You will live there, not as a prisoner, and not as a companion, in the way Harrington intended. You will be my guest. In return, you will perform a service for me. A service, she whispered. My late mother was a bibliophile, he said, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. Her library in the London house is vast, and it is in chaos. I require someone with a gentlewoman's education and a keen mind to catalogue it. It is a large project. It will take months, perhaps a year. You will be fed, clothed, and kept safe under my roof. By the time you are finished, the scandal will have died down, and I will provide you with a reference and a stipend that will allow you to begin a new life, a truly free one. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of duplicity, any hint of the predator she had seen in Harrington. She found none. She found only a deep, abiding seriousness. He was offering her a lifeline, a strange, unconventional lifeline, but a lifeline nonetheless. Why? She finally asked. Why do this for a stranger? £40,000. To employ a librarian? The Duke looked away, his gaze settling on the fire. I despise men like Harrington, and I value old books. Let us leave it at that. He turned back to her, offering his arm. Do you accept, Miss Vale? She looked at the arm he offered. It was a choice. Go with him into an unknown, gilded cage, or face the lions of society alone. Elara Vale took a deep breath and placed her hand on his arm. I accept, Your Grace. Ashworth House in Mayfair was not a house. It was a palace. It stood on the corner of a grand square, a monolith of pale Portland stone, its windows gleaming like rows of judging eyes. Elara felt impossibly small as the Duke handed her down from his carriage. The butler, a tall, severe man named Jennings, opened the door before they had even reached the top step. The inside was breathtaking, but cold. A massive entrance hall of black and white marble stretched before them, a grand staircase sweeping up into the shadows. It was immaculate, silent, and felt entirely unoccupied. Jennings, the Duke said, his voice echoing in the vast space. This is Miss Vale. She will be staying with us indefinitely. She is to be afforded every courtesy. Have the rose suite prepared for her. Jennings gave Elara a single, comprehensive glance. His expression was perfectly neutral, yet Elara felt she had been weighed, measured, and found irregular. At once, Your Grace. And send for Mrs. Davies, he added. A moment later, a woman in a stiff black dress, a silver chatelaine of keys at her waist, descended the stairs. This was Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper. She was older than Jennings, with sharp blue eyes and a mouth set in a permanent line of disapproval. Miss Vale will be residing with us, the Duke explained again. She will be undertaking a private project for me in the library. See that she has whatever she requires. New clothing, materials, anything. Mrs. Davies curtsied. Of course, Your Grace, if Miss Vale will come with me. Elara looked at the Duke, but he had already turned away, shrugging off his coat. I have business in the city, Miss Vale. We will discuss the library this evening. Mrs. Davies will see to you." And like that, he was gone, disappearing into a hallway, leaving her alone with the formidable housekeeper. Elara felt as if she had been passed from one keeper to another. "This way, miss," Mrs. Davies said, her tone crisp. The rose suite was beautiful. It was decorated in pale pinks and creams, with a soft Axminster carpet and a lovely view of the private gardens. A fire was already crackling in the hearth. It was more luxurious than any room she had ever stayed in, even before her family's fall. But it felt like a cage, a lovely, silken, gilded cage. "His Grace has eclectic tastes," Mrs. Davies said, her hands clasped. "We have not had a long-term guest in many years, not since the old Duchess passed. It's lovely," Elara said quietly. "A seamstress will be called this afternoon, miss. His Grace mentioned you would require a new wardrobe. Dinner is at 8. His Grace prefers punctuality." The housekeeper paused, her sharp eyes seeming to soften for just a fraction of a second. "His Grace is a good man, miss, but he is a private man. He values discretion, and he does not like to be disturbed." The implication was clear. Know your place. You are not family. "I understand, Mrs. Davies. Thank you." Left alone, Elara sank onto the silk-covered chaise lounge. The whiplash of the day was catching up with her. Just this morning, she had been the property of a vile creature. Now, she was the guest of a reclusive duke, living in splendor, about to be given new gowns. It was a fairy tale, but it felt wrong. She was indebted, not in coin, but in a way that felt heavier. She was a project, a charity case. That evening she dressed in the best of the few gowns she'd been allowed to retrieve from her home, a simple, dark blue muslin. She found her way to the dining room, a cavernous space that could have seated 40. The Duke was already there, standing by the fireplace, reading a letter. "Miss Vale," he said, folding the paper. "Please, sit." They ate in near total silence, served by 2 footmen who moved like ghosts. The food was exquisite, but Elara could barely taste it. The Duke seemed lost in thought, his brow furrowed. Finally, as the dessert plates were cleared, he spoke. "The library," he said, as if they were picking up a casual conversation. "Yes, Your Grace." "It is on the 3rd floor. It was my mother's sanctuary. After she died, 10 years ago, I had it locked. No one has been inside since. I suspect it is disorganized." "I am not afraid of dust, Your Grace," Elara said. He looked at her, a small, almost smile touching his lips. "I suspect you are not afraid of much, Miss Vale. Come, I will show you." He led her up the grand staircase, past a gallery of imposing ancestors, and down a long, quiet corridor. At the very end was a set of double doors. He produced a key from his waistcoat and unlocked them. The doors swung open with a groan, releasing the scent of old paper, leather, and trapped time. The room was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling shelves, 2 stories high, with a rolling ladder. A massive globe stood in one corner, and 2 large desks sat near the bay window. But the Duke was right. It was in chaos. Books were stacked on every surface, piled on the floor, spilling from open crates. "My mother was a collector," he said, his voice softer here. She was not a cataloguer." "It's wonderful," Elara breathed, stepping inside. She ran her fingers over the spine of a leather-bound volume of poetry. "It's a life's work." "Yes, that's what I am offering you." He walked to the window and looked out at the London rooftops. "You will have full access. Order it as you see fit. My only condition is that you do not remove anything from this room." "I would never," Elara said, insulted. "I know." He turned to her. "I have also taken a liberty. I sent a note to your father. Ilara stiffened. What did it say? It informed him that his debt to Lord Harrington is cleared, and that you are in my employ, under my protection, as my private librarian. It also informed him that he is not to contact you, and he is not to set foot in this house. I've enclosed a small draft for his living expenses, on the condition that he removes to the country. He is not a good influence, Miss Vale. Ilara felt a strange, conflicting wave of shame and profound relief. He had severed the final tie for her. He had seen the entire problem and solved it with a few strokes of a pen. "Thank you, Your Grace," she whispered, her throat tight. "My name," he said suddenly. "In private, when we are working, you may call me Alec." I couldn't, Your Grace." "It is not a request. It is a condition of your employment. I am Alistair Blackwood. Being called Your Grace by the only intelligent person I've spoken to all week is taxing." He gave her that same brief hint of a smile. "Now, I will leave you to it. Mrs. Davies will provide you with ledgers and ink." He walked to the door, then paused. "Ilara." She looked up, startled to hear her own name. "Harrington is a spiteful man," he said, his tone serious again. "You are safe within these walls, but I would advise you not to leave the house without my escort. Not for a while. The world is not as civilized as my mother's library." He closed the doors, and Ilara was left alone in the magnificent, dusty room. She was a prisoner, but her cage was a library. She was a guest, but she was also an employee, and her employer, the cold, reclusive Duke of Ashworth, was a man of staggering contradictions. The days settled into a strange, quiet routine. Ilara spent her waking hours in the library. It was her fortress, her sanctuary. She lost herself in the scent of vellum and ink, meticulously sorting, cleaning, and creating a ledger. She found first editions of Shakespeare, rare Italian manuscripts, and volumes of philosophy that challenged and excited her. She would work until her hands were smudged with ink and her back ached. But it was a good ache. It was the ache of purpose. She rarely saw the Duke. He kept to his own wing of the house, consumed by business. They met only for dinner, which remained a formal, quiet affair. Yet, Ilara found herself looking forward to it. Their conversation started small, polite inquiries about her progress, but slowly deepened. He would ask her opinion on a volume she had catalogued, and they would find themselves in a spirited debate about poetry or politics. She saw glimpses of the man beneath the cold ducal armour. She saw his dry wit, his sharp intellect, and a profound, hidden loneliness that she recognized because it mirrored her own. She began to see his coldness, not as arrogance, but as a shield, much like the one she was building herself. After 3 weeks, the seamstress had delivered a new wardrobe. Ilara, feeling emboldened by her work and starved for fresh air, decided to test the Duke's warning. She wanted to visit a bookshop on Piccadilly, just a few streets away. She told Mrs. Davies she was going for a short walk. The housekeeper had pursed her lips, but said nothing. The freedom was intoxicating. The crisp autumn air, the bustle of carriages, the noise of London, it all made her feel alive. She felt, for a moment, like a normal woman. The feeling didn't last. As she browsed the shelves of Hatchard's, she felt a presence behind her. She turned, and her blood ran cold. Lord Cuthbert Harrington was smiling at her. "Miss Vale," he purred, blocking her path. "Out on your own? Has the Duke already tired of his new plaything?" "Lord Harrington," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Excuse me. You are in my way." "Oh, but I think you are in my way," he said, stepping closer. The other patrons of the shop were politely ignoring them, but she could feel their curious stares. You see, I did not appreciate being humiliated by Ashworth. He may have bought your paltry debt, but he did not buy you. The debt is paid. I am a free woman. Are you? He laughed, a low, ugly sound. You are his kept woman. You live in his house. You wear the clothes he bought you. Everyone in London is talking about it. The Duke's new whore. It's quite the scandal. He hasn't protected you, my dear. He has simply put you in a bigger, more expensive cage. Every word was a slap. She had known, abstractly, that there would be gossip, but hearing it so crudely stated made her feel sick. What do you want, Lord Harrington? What I always wanted, he whispered, his eyes dark. You. The Duke is a powerful man, but he is reclusive. He doesn't play the social game. I do. I can destroy what little is left of your name. I can spread rumors so vile that even the Duke won't be able to stomach the scandal. He will throw you out. And when he does, I will be waiting. That is a threat. It is a promise. Or you could come to me now, willingly. I am a generous man, Elara. Far more entertaining than that cold fish Ashworth. I will give you jewels, a house of your own. I would rather be in a gutter, Elara spat, her fear giving way to a white-hot rage. She pushed past him, her shoulder knocking him off balance. She fled the shop, not even looking as she hailed a passing hackney cab. She threw the driver a coin and gasped, "Ashworth House," her heart pounding. When she returned, she felt soiled. She tore off the new gown, the one she had been so proud of, and scrubbed her face and hands. Harrington's words echoed in her mind. Everyone is talking about it. She did not go down to dinner that night. She sent word via a maid that she was unwell. She couldn't face the Duke. She couldn't look at him without seeing the scandal she was bringing to his door. She had been naive to think this was a simple arrangement. He had freed her from one man, but in doing so, he had bound her to him in the eyes of the world. And in doing so, he had painted a target on her back. She didn't tell him about the encounter. She was terrified that if he knew the trouble she was causing, he would agree with Harrington. He would see that she was more trouble than she was worth, and he would turn her out. The thought of facing the world with Harrington waiting in the shadows was more terrifying than any ghost. She retreated to the library, her fortress. But the walls felt higher now, and the locked door felt less like protection and more like the entrance to her cell. Elara buried her fear in her work. She did not leave Ashworth House again. She became a ghost in the grand mansion, living entirely between the Rose Suite and the library. Her interactions with Alec, she still called him Your Grace, at dinner became strained. He noticed her withdrawal, her new skittishness. "You seem troubled, Miss Vale," he said one evening, his dark eyes watching her over the rim of his wine glass. "The work is daunting, Your Grace." "I am simply tired," she lied. He didn't press, but his gaze lingered, analytical and concerned. It made her feel worse. She was lying to the one man who had shown her any kindness. A week after her encounter with Harrington, Elara was working in a far, dusty corner of the library. This section was personal, filled with poetry, journals, and bound collections of letters. It was clearly the collection of his mother, the late Duchess, Annalise Blackwood. She was sorting a stack of books, tied with a faded ribbon, when one slipped from her grasp. It was a worn, leather-bound copy of Paradise Lost. As it hit the floor, a small, hidden clasp on its side sprang open. It wasn't just a book. It was a book safe, hollowed out. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a thin packet of letters tied with the same blue ribbon. Elara knew she shouldn't. This was not part of the catalogue. This was private. But her hand moved as if of its own accord. She untied the ribbon. The handwriting on the top letter was familiar. With a jolt, she recognized it. It was her mother's. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the brittle paper. The date was from 15 years ago, when Elara was just a child, when her mother was still alive. Dearest Annalise, I must write to you in the strictest confidence. Alistair's weakness is growing. The nights he spends at the gaming tables are getting longer. He hides the debts, but I find the notes from the moneylenders. I fear, my dearest friend, that he will one day leave us destitute. He will leave our sweet Elara with nothing but a ruined name. Elara's breath caught. She read on, her eyes flying across the page. It was a correspondence between her mother, Eleanor Vale, and Annalise Blackwood, the Duchess of Ashworth. They were not just acquaintances. They had been intimate, cherished friends. She found the next letter, this one in the Duchess's hand. My dearest Eleanor, you must not despair. Your fears are valid, but you are not alone. I have spoken with my husband. Should the worst ever come to pass, we will see that Elara is protected. But I wish to make you a more personal vow from one mother to another. My own son, Alec, is a serious boy, but his heart is good. I have made him promise me. Elara's heart was hammering so hard she felt dizzy. She fumbled for the last, thickest letter. It was from the Duchess, written only days before her death. My dearest Eleanor, the doctors tell me I do not have long. My greatest regret is that I will not see our children grow. I have made my son, Alistair, renew his vow to me. He is a man of his word, though the world sees him as cold. He gave me his solemn oath that if your husband, in his folly, ever brought ruin to your door, he would find Elara. He would move heaven and earth to see her safe. He swore it on my life. He will not break it. I have told him to look for you, to check on your family, to intervene if need be. He knows of the potential debt. He knows of the vipers your husband associates with. This new man, Harrington, chief among them. He is watching, Eleanor. Even if you do not see him, my son is watching. Rest easy, my friend. Your daughter will be safe. My son will protect her. It is my dying wish. Elara sank to the floor, the letters clutched in her hand. It wasn't a whim. It wasn't a strategic move against Harrington. It wasn't even pity. It was a promise, a deathbed vow from a son to his mother, to protect the daughter of her dearest friend. He had known. He must have been watching her family's decline for years, waiting for the moment his mother had feared. The intervention at the club wasn't a coincidence. It was a plan. He had been waiting for Harrington to make his move. The £40,000, the job, cataloguing the library. It was all a pretense. A careful, honourable, and devastatingly kind pretense to fulfill a decade-old promise. He wasn't giving her charity. He was creating a position for her, allowing her to keep her dignity while he kept her safe, just as his mother had asked. Tears streamed down her face, tears of shock, of grief for the mothers she had lost, and of a profound, overwhelming gratitude that left her breathless. She thought of her strained, quiet dinners, his analytical gaze, his careful questions. He hadn't been assessing an employee. He had been checking on the girl he had promised to protect. Her coldness, her lies about being tired. How must that have looked to him? She stood up, clutching the letters. She could not keep this to herself. She had to find him. She had to know. She ran from the library, through the silent corridors, not even knowing where she was going. She found Jennings in the main hall. "Where is the Duke?" she demanded, her voice raw. Jennings, startled by her wild appearance, replied, "In his solar, miss. But he is not to be—" She didn't wait. She ran to the solar, a room she had never entered, and threw open the doors without knocking. Alec was at his desk, surrounded by papers. He looked up, his face a mask of shock at her intrusion. "Elara, what is it? Are you hurt?" She stood in the doorway, trembling, the letters held out in her hand. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me it was for her? For your mother?" Alec's expression froze. His gaze dropped to the letters, and all the color drained from his face. The ducal mask shattered, revealing the man beneath, a man who looked shocked, vulnerable, and utterly exposed. "Where?" he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you find those?" "In your mother's copy of Paradise Lost," Elara said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "You've been watching me all this time. This job, this house. It's all an elaborate lie to honor a promise." Alec stood slowly, his face grim. "It is not a lie, Elara. It is an arrangement." "It is a charity!" she cried, the humiliation of it stinging more than Harrington's insults. "You bought me like a prize horse, just as he did. The only difference is the nobility of your motive." "That is not true." His voice was sharp, cutting. "I gave you employment. I gave you a choice. I gave you a refuge. Would you have preferred I left you to Harrington?" "I would have preferred the truth. I am not a child to be protected by secrets. I am a woman, facing ruin. And you let me believe I was a project, a curiosity." "The truth was not mine to give," he countered, stepping towards her. "It was a private promise between my mother and yours. Revealing it would have been a betrayal of her trust. And what would it have changed? It would have made you feel what you feel right now. Indebted. I wanted to give you your dignity, not a new set of chains." They stared at each other, the air in the room crackling. Elara's anger began to fade, replaced by a dawning, complex understanding. He had been trying to protect her pride. He had been trying to honor her mother, not just his own. Suddenly, her own secret felt heavy and shameful. "He found me." Alec's head snapped up. "What?" "Lord Harrington," she whispered. "I went out, weeks ago, to a bookshop. He was there. He threatened me. He said, everyone in London calls me your whore. He said he would ruin me, ruin you, until you threw me out. And then he would be waiting." The cold fury that entered Alec's eyes was terrifying. It was a controlled Arctic rage that was far more frightening than any shouting. "And you did not tell me." It was not a question. "I was afraid," she admitted. "I was afraid you would see I was nothing but trouble and that you would send me away. Because I was just a duty to you." "A duty," he repeated, his voice flat. He walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "You were, at first, a promise to a dying woman, a task to be managed." He turned back, his eyes burning into hers. "It has not felt like a duty for a very long time, Elara." The raw emotion in his voice stunned her into silence. Before she could process it, he was moving, his energy electric. "He wants a scandal," Alec said, his mind clearly working. "He wants to fight in the shadows and whispers." "Very well. We will bring it into the light." "What do you mean?" "I have not hosted a ball at Ashworth House since my mother died. The Ton is desperate to see the inside. They are desperate to see the reclusive Duke's new acquisition." His use of Harrington's term was bitter. In 3 days, I will host the ball of the season, and you, Elara Vale, will not be my librarian. You will be my guest of honor. I will not hide you. I will launch you." "That's madness. They will eat me alive." Harrington will be invited," Alec said, a predatory smile touching his lips. "He will not be able to resist the chance to see you humiliated. And when he makes his move, in my home, in front of the entire ton, I will destroy him. Not with money, but with the truth." The night of the ball, Ashworth House was transformed. The cold, silent halls were ablaze with thousands of candles. Music drifted from the grand ballroom, and the scent of hothouse roses filled the air. Elara stood at the top of the staircase, her hand trembling on the banister. She was wearing a gown of deep emerald silk, a colour Alec had chosen, with the Ashworth diamonds, loaned by the Duke, clasped around her neck. She looked like a duchess herself. "You are shaking," Alec said, appearing at her side. He looked magnificent in his black formal wear, a stark, powerful figure. "I feel like a lamb being led to slaughter," she breathed. "You are no lamb, Elara. You are a lioness, and you are with me." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" They descended the staircase together. A hush fell over the ballroom. Every eye in London society turned to them. They saw their reclusive, powerful Duke, and on his arm, the beautiful, mysterious woman who was the subject of every whispered rumour. Alec led her directly to the centre of the floor, and as the orchestra began a waltz, he swept her into his arms. They danced. And in that moment, the crowd, the whispers, the fear, it all melted away. There was only the music and his strong, steady hold. His eyes never left hers, and in them, she no longer saw a guardian or a duke. She saw Alec, and she saw an emotion she was terrified to name. As the waltz ended, a figure stepped forward, a sneer twisting his face. Lord Harrington. "A lovely performance, Ashworth," Harrington said, his voice loud enough to carry. "You've trained her well. She dances almost as well as a high-bred lady." The music stopped. The blood drained from Elara's face. Alec's hand tightened on her waist, holding her steady. "Harrington, I am surprised you had the courage to accept my invitation." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it. I came to see the £40,000 whore," Harrington spat. A collective gasp went through the room. Several ladies looked faint. This was not a whisper. This was a declaration of war. Elara flinched, but Alec's grip was iron. He turned slowly, addressing not Harrington, but the entire room. "You have all heard the rumours," Alec's voice boomed, silencing the crowd. "You have all wondered about the presence of Miss Vale in my home. Lord Harrington is kind enough to bring your vulgar questions into the open. So let me answer them." He looked at Elara, his gaze softening. "Miss Vale is here for one reason. She is the daughter of my mother's dearest and oldest friend. She is here under my protection, a charge I accepted from my mother on her deathbed." He had just legitimized her presence in a way no one could question. To question Elara now was to question the dying wish of the beloved late Duchess. The ton shifted, their expressions turning from judgment to sympathy. "A convenient story," Harrington snarled, seeing his power slip. "She was sold, by her own father, to me." "She was," Alec agreed calmly. "Or rather, her father's debt was. A debt you, Lord Harrington, manufactured." A new silence fell. This was a new twist. "That is a lie," Harrington blustered. "Is it?" Alec produced a small sheaf of papers from his coat. "I have here affidavits from 3 different men who witnessed you using marked cards at Brooks's. I have the testimony of a forger who copied Lord Vale's signature on notes he never agreed to. You did not simply win a debt, Harrington. You are a cheat and a fraud. You systematically destroyed Alistair Vale to get your hands on his daughter." Harrington's face went ashen. He looked around, trapped. "Lord Harrington did not lose Miss Vale to me in a fair bargain," Alec continued, his voice like ice. "I paid him £40,000, double the fraudulent debt, to save Miss Vale from a blackmailer and a predator. He did not take the money to cut his losses. He took it as a payoff for his silence. A silence it seems he is too stupid to keep." Every single person in the room turned to look at Harrington, their eyes filled with scorn. He was no longer a roguish villain. He was a common cheat. His reputation was utterly destroyed. "Get out," Alec commanded. "You will pay for this, Ashworth." "No, you will." Alec nodded to two large footmen. "Show Lord Harrington the door, and if he ever sets foot in Mayfair again, I will have him arrested." Harrington was physically removed from the ballroom, sputtering and enraged. The orchestra, taking its cue from a nod from the Duke, struck up a new, lively tune. Alec turned back to Elara. Her father was not just a fool, he was a victim. Her name was not just cleared, it was vindicated. He had given her back her life. "Alec," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears. "I believe," he said, that rare, small smile returning. "This is our dance, Miss Vale." The ballroom was empty. The last of the carriages had rolled away, leaving the square in silence. The scandal of the Duke's whore was dead, replaced by the far more titillating scandal of Lord Harrington's epic, public ruin. Elara Vale was no longer a pariah. She was a romantic heroine, the noble ward of the Duke, saved from a dragon. Elara stood with Alec in the library, the site of her confession just days before. The candle smoke from the ballroom still hung in the air, but here there was only the comfortable quiet of the books. "Your father," Alec said, breaking the silence, "has been informed of Harrington's fraudulent actions. The courts will likely restore some of his land. He is humbled. He asked me to convey his deepest apologies to you." "Thank you, Alec," Elara said. She felt a strange peace. Her father was a weak man, but he was not the monster. The true monster had been vanquished. "Thank you for everything." Alec walked over to the desk where she had spent so many hours. He picked up the finished ledger, the pristine record of his mother's collection. "The catalogue is complete, I see," he said formally. Elara's heart clenched. The ball, the fight, it had all been to clear her name, to fulfill his promise. And now, the promise was fulfilled. The arrangement was over. "Yes," she said, her voice small. "It is finished." He turned to her, his expression unreadable, the ducal mask slipping back into place. "Then my mother's wish is fulfilled. Your father is safe, your name is cleared, and your work is done. You are, in every sense of the word, free, Miss Vale." He opened a drawer and took out a banker's draft. "This is the stipend I promised you. It is more than enough for you to secure a cottage, perhaps in Bath, or to travel. You can begin your new life." This was it. The moment she had craved. True freedom. She was no one's property, no one's ward, no one's employee. She looked at the draft, then at his face, and she found, to her profound shock, that her heart was breaking. Freedom felt suddenly like exile. I don't want it," she whispered. Alec frowned. "I don't understand. This is what we agreed upon. This is your freedom." "I do not want freedom from you, Alec." The words tore out of her, raw and honest. "I have spent my entire life as a pawn. For my father, for Harrington, and even in a way, for you and your mother. A duty, a charge, a guest of honor. I am tired of being what other people want me to be." She stepped toward him, her hands clenched at her sides. "You fulfilled your mother's promise. You cleared my name. You did your duty. Now, for once, I want to know. What do you want?" He stared at her, his composure cracking. "What I want is not part of the arrangement." "Damn the arrangement," she said, her voice rising. "I am not a contract, Alistair Blackwood. I am a woman, and I am asking you. What do you want?" He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He gripped her upper arms, his gaze intense, searching. "You want the truth? The truth is that the duty ended the first week. The truth is, I found myself inventing reasons to go to the library. The truth is, I hosted that ball not just to save your reputation, but because I could not stand the thought of Harrington breathing the same air as you. Because I wanted, for one selfish night, to show the entire world that you were with me. Alec," she breathed. "I have lived in the shadow of my mother's death for 10 years, he said, his voice raw. "This house has been a tomb. And you came into this library and you brought it back to life. You brought me back to life." He dropped his hands, stepping back. "But I cannot ask you to stay. I bought your freedom, Elara. I will not be the one to take it from you." Elara looked at the man before her, the cold, reclusive Duke, the kind, lonely man who read poetry, the fierce protector who had ruined his enemy in a ballroom. "You are a fool, Your Grace," she said, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. He looked shocked. "I beg your pardon?" "You bought my freedom," she said, stepping forward again, closing the space he had made. "But you never asked if I wanted it. What if I have found what I want, right here, in this dusty, wonderful room?" His eyes widened, hope dawning in them. "Elara, I am proposing a new contract," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "Not one of indenture, or employment or duty, a contract of partnership." He was slow to understand. "Partnership? You are a brilliant, lonely, and frustratingly noble man," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "And I am an intelligent, stubborn, and penniless librarian. It seems to me we would suit." It was his turn to be speechless. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, not as a promise to be kept, but as a future to be grasped. "I do not want to buy your freedom, Elara Vale," Alec said, his voice thick with emotion. He gently cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I want you to share mine. I want to argue about books with you every night. I want to see you across my dining table for the next 50 years. "Is that a proposal, Duke?" she whispered. "It is," he said. "Marry me, Elara. Not because you are in my debt, not because I am protecting you. Marry me because this house is unbearable without you in it." She didn't need to answer. She rose on her toes and met his lips, sealing their new contract. It was not a sale, and it was not a bargain. It was a choice made in a quiet library by 2 people who had finally, truly found their freedom. Thank you for joining us for this story. The line between being a prisoner and being protected is often thinner than we think. Elara found herself sold by one man, only to be saved by another. But her real journey began when she stopped being a debt and demanded to be an equal. She had to fight for her own voice, even against the man who rescued her. What did you think of the Duke's secret? Was he right to hide his promise from Elara? Or did his noble lie just create another kind of cage? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey of drama, secrets, and romance, please show your support by hitting that like button. It truly helps our channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good story, and most importantly, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another dramatic tale. We appreciate every one of you. See you next time.